See everyone, and I am now going to call the meeting to order. And I want to begin by welcoming Lisa Mclean, who is our Executive Director. So welcome, Lisa. I'm just going to briefly introduce you. Lisa served as the coordinator of the statewide 2020 census outreach effort, and she worked with nonprofit, philanthropic, and appointed and elected leaders across the state. She spearheaded the state's efforts to educate and build awareness about the 2020 census and ultimately to encourage confidence, trust, and participation in the process. And so Lisa brought 25 years of experience to that role and to us, managing nonpartisan grassroots political organizing projects in the Americas, Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. She holds a BA in economics from Boston College and an MA in International Affairs from Johns Hopkins University. So welcome, we're so glad you're here, Lisa. Thanks for joining us. All right, so to introduce the topics for discussion and action on our agenda this evening, I will reiterate our mandate. The mandate of the commission set out in the Washington State Redistricting Act is to accomplish state legislative and congressional redistricting in accordance with the Washington State Constitution. The bipartisan commission was created to listen to the public every 10 years so that districts would be drawn by statute and with public input. So my role as the chair is to articulate and manage the commission's process. In my role as chair, I will ensure the process is as participatory, fair, and equitable as possible. The 4 voting commissioners have power and responsibility to vote, ultimately creating and adopting a redistricting plan. Voting commissioners will make decisions that will create maps to best represent the interests of all Washingtonians. Those of you from the public joining us this evening, welcome. It's my goal to encourage communities across Washington as fully as I can and to hear and address your concerns and your requests. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we have jurisdiction. Where we don't, I will do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond more effectively. So as I do in each meeting, I will now review our purpose and values. Together as a commission, we've agreed to the following values and mission: to provide an open, transparent, credible process that is grounded in statute and where all voices are welcome and there is access for everyone. To conduct ourselves with transparency, respect, and civility, where commissioners will participate and negotiate in good faith, and to meet the deadline outlined by law, and to produce the best possible maps. I want to now review the public input that I have received since our last meeting on March 15. So I'm going to tell you now what I have heard in that interim. We had one question about redistricting history, which I was able to respond to. We had one request to reconsider a boundary line in Pierce County related to the 6th Congressional District. We had one request for assistance with redistricting in a constituents region, and one suggested scholarly paper featuring a redistricting guide. Thank you for your comments, questions, and suggestions. We're doing our best to respond to your inquiries as they come to us. So I'm now going to do a roll call. Commissioner Joe Fain.
Present.
Welcome. Commissioner April Sims.
Present.
Welcome. Commissioner Paul Graves.
Present.
Welcome. And Commissioner Brady Walkinshaw.
Present. Thank you.
You bet. So during our discussion, I'm going to call on you in order as I usually do. And I will use the order throughout our meeting this evening so each of you can anticipate when it's your turn. So we're just going to rotate like we usually do. Whoever speaks first, that will rotate with each round of discussion. So the order we'll start with is Commissioner Fain, Commissioner Sims, Commissioner Graves, and Commissioner Walkinshaw. Thank you. So I'd like to begin with the approval of minutes. And so I'd like you to take a look at the minutes held on March 15, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Are there items for discussion or amendment?
just want to say that our minutes takers are very detailed and thorough, and I'm appreciative of it.
Thank you to Maria, who has been taking our minutes. Thanks very much. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? All right, so the motion passes. The next item on our agenda is updates. And so I'd like to begin with a budget update. As you know, it's that season. And I'd like to invite Bernard Dean, who is the Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives, to provide an update on the budget.
Good evening. So I thought I'd go ahead and maybe share a screen so I can sort of show you what some of the budgets look like that are being rolled out for the 21-23 biennium. So just bear with me for a moment here. Okay. Hopefully you should all be seeing this document, which is commonly referred to as a recommendation summary in legislative parlance. What this displays here is for the biennium that begins in July, the 21-23 budget. The carry forward level estimate, or the base level budget that was assumed, was $1.2 million. We had some concerns about whether or not the commission was appropriately resourced to do its work, given that some of the work may extend beyond December of 2021 and into next calendar year. And so we had some conversations with budget writers to ensure that there was some additional funding provided to extend the staffing of the commission at a minimum through April of 2022. And then also to provide some additional funding to ensure that the director could stay on board through the end of that fiscal year, just to help transition sort of closing down the commission as an agency and its operations. And there's also, last time around 10 years ago, there were also some unemployment benefits that were paid out to some of the staff who left the commission at the end of its work. So we also looked at providing some additional funding for that. So with all of that, so you see there are two columns next to the governor's request level. That's proposed Substitute Senate Bill 5092 by Senator Rolfus, and also proposed Substitute House Bill 1094 by Representative Ormsby, who are the chairs of the Ways, Means, and Appropriations Committee, respectively. And so added in those budget proposals, and they're actually being heard as we, or they're being exec'd as we speak. They were heard earlier last week, and they're now being exec'd. And so both of those proposals include another $455,000, bringing the total commission budget for next biennium to 1.6 or 1.7 million to ensure that the commission has the resources it needs to complete its work. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I have a question. Bernard, does this additional money, is it earmarked just for additional expenses rolling into the first quarter of 2022, or are some of these funds authorized for our outreach efforts?
So, and I'll stop sharing the screen here momentarily. So the funding is not necessarily earmarked for a particular purpose. So again, this is for the budget beginning on July 1. And so the assumptions around that funding level relate to staffing expenses. And so, but the funding can be used however the commission sees fit. But presumably this would be, most of this additional funding that we're talking about would be the funding that was added would be for the staffing expenses after the commission has hopefully completed its work on November 15th. But the underlying budget, the 1.2, the base budget, that includes funding for things such as outreach and communications as well. And we had conversations, I think, earlier in terms of the current fiscal year budget, as you've been accruing savings, not being fully staffed at this stage. And so there are savings accruing that can also be leveraged towards those outreach efforts if you so choose.
So just to clarify, Bernard, that money does not carry over into the next fiscal year, is that right?
That's correct. So, so in the state, we appropriate on a fiscal year basis. And so the funds that are available beginning on July 1 through June 30th have to be used or they revert back to the general fund.
Additional questions, comments? Thank you, Bernard. We appreciate your time. All right, I'd like to now turn to a staffing update. I'd like to welcome Lisa, who I've introduced at the beginning of the meeting. And as our executive director, she's our first staff hire. Lisa is working with legislative HR to hire 4 additional positions: communications director, public outreach coordinator, executive administrative assistant, and administrative assistant. Our intention is to begin advertising technical positions next week. So the 4 positions I just listed are on our website at the moment. Questions and comments?
Just a clarification, Madam Chair. The hiring for commission staff, now that we've brought on our executive director, that's handled entirely by the executive director, and the commission doesn't have a role in that beyond hiring the executive. Is that correct?
That's right. So our executive director will hire our staff, of course, with our input, should we want to offer any to her, but it's her responsibility now that she's hired.
Great, thank you.
Just a quick question. Are we prioritizing any, are we hoping to hire these fill all 4 of these positions at once, or are we prioritizing any one position over another? So I know we had talked about trying to prioritize the communications director, but it looks like there's an outreach coordinator that we are recruiting for as well. So is there a tier in terms of how we're prioritizing filling the positions?
Lisa, what are your thoughts?
I think, thank you for that question. I think definitely communications director is something that is a high priority for us. We tried to get those posted on day 2. And I think we will start to, as soon as we see some qualified individuals in any one of those positions, we're gonna start to probably do some interviews. We'd like to actually start interviewing next week.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Other questions, comments? Terrific. I would now like to talk about some public events that I've been invited to, and I plan to attend on behalf of the commission. So I'm just going to list those. When we had this discussion as a commission, I let you know that I would keep you posted about invitations that came my way, just so that everyone knows where I am and how I'm representing us. So there will be a play on April 24th from 4 to 6:30, put on by Politics in Action. The play is called Many Maps, One Voice, and I will serve as a discussant. So watch the play and respond to it on behalf of the commission. So Delta Sigma Theta will hold a redistricting meeting on Saturday, May 8th from 10 to 11 a.m. and I will attend that meeting as well to discuss our outreach efforts. And the League of Women Voters has asked me to participate in an interview for a show magazine on the air, which will be aired on May 10th at 6 p.m. So those are the events at the moment, and I look forward to give you an update as those unfold. I'll do my best, team.
Thank you for doing these, Commissioner.
You bet. And I look forward to roping you all into them as time goes by. All right, any questions, more comments about that? Terrific. So I would like to now move to agenda item 4, which is discussion. So I want to begin with our tribal consultation policy. I've listed this item as a discussion item, although I hope if it's appropriate, we can take action on it tonight. But I want public comment to happen first. So I hope we can discuss it. People have a chance to hear us discuss that. Then we'll have the public comment, and then we'll take action if it's appropriate after that. So at this point, I want to just discuss it. Hopefully all of you have had an opportunity to review the tribal consultation policy, included in the meeting packet of materials. I'd like to discuss it beginning by asking for your comments, questions, and suggestions. So just one more comment about it. The policy was written guided by RCW 43.376. That is government to government relationship with Indian tribes. Also the 1989 Centennial Accord and the 1999 Millennium Agreement. So those are the statutes that we need to be thinking about as we craft policy and our response to consultation with American Indian tribes. Okay, comments. I'm going to begin with Commissioner Fain. Comments, questions, suggestions.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair, again for the work to put this together. I think the proposal looks good. The one question I have in the RCW Indian tribes, in the definition section of the RCW Indian tribes are defined as federally recognized Indian tribes, and so do we need to repeat that federally recognized designation in the policy that we adopt?
Great question. What are your thoughts, Commissioner?
I would say it's helpful to probably include it if we are using RCW 43.370 as the basis. Then I think it already spells it out as being applying to federally recognized tribes. But just to allay confusion, it might be helpful to include it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do others want to respond to that or have other questions, comments? Let's see. Next is Commissioner Sims.
Yeah, I'll just echo, I think Commissioner Fain brings up a really good point. I think since we're modeling this off of a government to government policy that exists, we should be explicit and spelling out that we either need to reference the RCW so that folks have a reference point, or we need to spell out specifically that this applies to the 29 federally recognized tribes in Washington state, just so there's clarity and consistency. And so that we're being thoughtful about, sovereignty and, lifting up the government to government relationship that we have.
Terrific. I appreciate that. Next is, Commissioner Graves.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you again for pulling this consultation policy together. I likewise agree that it's a good policy. I've heard the same similar concerns from representative of some of our tribal partners asking for that clarification, and I think I'm fully on board with it as well. I think we might even hear some public testimony about it when we get to that point, but I would be, I think, pretty comfortable with that change, adopting the policy.
Great, thank you. And finally, Commissioner Walkinshaw.
I don't have anything to add. I agree. I would encourage us to do what's been stated.
All right, great. Additional comments or questions? Tara Hines, our AG counsel, is here to answer specific questions if there are additional questions. All right, so what I'm going to suggest that we do then is, after we've had public comments, I'm going to reintroduce it as an action item and ask at that point if you're ready to adopt it with amendments, or if we should just wait until you can take a look at a completed policy. So I'll bring that up when we get to that part of the agenda, action items. The next item for discussion, if you're ready to move on, just checking to make sure. Oh, please.
Commissioner, if I could just make one final comment. We may, I'm just curious because some folks have reached out to, I think, all four of us about the issue we were just talking about. And if more feedback comes in over the next week, I just want to make sure people don't feel like the door is shut. So I hope more feedback will likely come in on this. I just want to make sure we get this right with our tribal partners.
I appreciate that. And so perhaps the right action will be to leave it for a while and push action to the next meeting so that we can receive additional comments before we agree on a policy. So we can further discuss it for action. Or what do you think? Does that seem like a good plan?
I think that's a great recap. I agree.
Okay.
Personally.
All right. Please, Commissioner Graves. Okay. Is it green? All right, terrific. So the next discussion item I wanted to talk over with you, I had the opportunity to meet with Craig Bill from the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs. And I was hoping we could consult with him to receive some education about consultation. And so he suggested that he would provide a high-level training in a public meeting for us. So he could give us a high-level training about consultation and government obligations related to consultation. And then he also suggested we host a roundtable discussion with 2 to 4 tribes that would be geographically representative, where tribal leaders can introduce to us their interests as we prepare for consultation. So this education is to prepare us for consultation. That is to say, we plan to engage in consultation. We're obligated to do that. So if the Governor's Office on Indian Affairs would brief us, and then we would invite tribal leaders to brief us, then we would be prepared to engage in consultation, which would not have to happen with the whole commission. We could do that in 1 or 2 commissioners at a time, engage in that consultation. So I wanted to just run this education plan by you. It would likely take place over several meetings. And so I want to now ask for comments, beginning with Commissioner Sims.
I have not seen this plan. I don't know if it's.
That's it. I just told you what it is. That's all it is.
All right. I was gonna say, wait, I don't have it. I process differently. So I like to see things, but no, that sounds right. I think making sure that we've got as much information as possible so that we can craft a plan makes sense to me.
Okay. Next, Commissioner Graves.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd obviously be up for being well-educated. Consultation policy works. My only even slight hesitation would be that I think we would need to be, if we're going to have 2 to 4 tribes come in and brief us, I just want to make sure that we're not picking favorites ahead of time or be seen to be picking favorites ahead of time, even if we're not. So I think that'll probably be something that we would need to navigate. But as long as at the end of the day, we give everybody a fair opportunity to provide input, I'd be comfortable with that. And of course, I'd be comfortable making sure that we're well educated on what the policy does.
Great. Thank you. Next, Commissioner Walkinshaw.
I agree with what's been said. Nothing to add.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Fain.
All good.
Terrific. Okay, then I'm going to plan to proceed with this education plan. That is to say, I will begin that process of inviting the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs to schedule training with us, and then begin the process of putting together a roundtable. Okay, next I want to discuss our outreach plan. So I would like to invite Lisa Mclean, who is our executive director, to brief us on her ideas for an outreach plan. But first, I want to just tell you the outline is meant simply as a starting place. With your input and discussion this evening, we hope to shape an actual outreach plan. So this is it's just sort of a way to begin the conversation because this is an important aspect of our work, and we want to make sure that we're going to craft a plan with the input of all of the commissioners. Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I was just, one of the first things I did was to sit down and think about what, where, when, how, as a way to think about how to put together this public outreach plan. And I think that just on top of it is, what are we trying to do? I think the idea is to maximize input and also be transparent about that public input that we're getting. So we want to, that's the goal of what we're trying to achieve. I think then we have the target audience is assumed to be adults. I don't expect that young people are going to be commenting on the redistricting plan, I think. But I think also we want to think about the state and its composition in terms of the digital divide, that we can do a lot online, but that we have a lot of people who might not be able to contribute their ideas by email. We want to make sure we have a post office, snail mail ways that people could write comments or give oral comments, and that to make sure that the other types of things is also to think about our languages English is great, but I think we also have the hard of hearing, deaf, who will want to contribute. And then we have the non-English speakers. We would have to decide maybe a policy of how many different languages. I mean, I think that there's some obvious languages. You know, as I was talking to the chair last week, I remember one time talking to someone from Tukwila, and they said we have 110 languages in our district. I don't think we can do that, but then where is the cutoff? You know, and for the census, we generally rounded around 10 languages. Does that make sense? And stuff. So that's something to consider as well. So I think it's the target audience, and then how to target that audience, right? And most effectively, I think it's something. The other thing I think is that I think there's a way to break down the state. And I suggested in the plan, like 8, what the notes that I wrote, 8 regions, but I don't know if they make sense. You know, do we go have even more regions? I think one of the regions I have here is, you know, is King County itself a region, or, you know, do we err by putting all of King and all of Puget Sound together? So that type of thing is, I'd welcome comment on whether or not that makes sense. I think the message that we want to put out to people is we want your input. This is the time for you to make input. This is how you can do it. Let's, you know, really try to think about how to make it as easy as possible for as many different people as possible. And I think one of the key ways, even though I did say we have a problem with digital and analog, is I think one of the key things is going to be the website. I think that as California has shown us, is there are things like we can ask people to draw their district, to describe their district, to send email, but also to mail email. And then we could publish on the website the calendar of meetings, of public meetings that we have, a link for registering to comment on those, and submit a request for a public meeting if somebody wanted to particularly have us come to their locality. Might be a way to do things. Obviously, we want to hold virtual meetings if possible. If we get to herd immunity, we could hold some in-person public meetings. And I think we want to advertise the meetings through Facebook, through Twitter. I was also thinking we could kind of create a poster with a blank space at the bottom that you could kind of fill in with a marker, so that you could really kind of send that out to all community organizations, to all tribes, to all cities, where a city could basically put, you know, at the entrance to the city building, come to the meeting. We're going to be talking about redistricting here, and they can put in there the time and the place and stuff like that. And then I think also a lot of the cities and the counties have weekly newsletters. We could maybe email those people and say, you know, here we're coming to your place, and use that. And then I also think it's maybe thinking about trying to organize our media availabilities in a way that if we were going to be in Yakima next week, we would basically be calling all of the publications, local publications in Yakima, to see if we couldn't get some op-eds, some interviews with commissioners and stuff like that, to talk about the process and to animate people to make them aware of that, if it's that. What I don't have here, and then there's a whole lot of things I don't have here, that I really welcome the opportunity to hear what you have to tell me, to think out some more ideas. But one thing I realized afterwards also is I don't have a timeline. And again, I'll just throw out public outreach. I would seem to me that we should be staffed up and working well by May. So I'm thinking like May to August, if the Census Bureau can get us real data by the middle of August. So maybe in that period between May and August, it might be the time where we could organize this outreach. So that's in a nutshell, but I welcome all ideas, either here, by email, anything. And we will flesh this out. And when we get it fleshed out, I think is the right chair that I think we would publish the public outreach plan on the website.
Oh yeah, so we will certainly do that. I think we're going to discuss it for a while with the commissioners. I think that's going to be a process that's ongoing. But now what I'd like to do is call on you in turn and get your input, so that that'll be reflected in the minutes, and we can use that information to start filling in the gaps here. So beginning with Commissioner Graves.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Lisa, for putting together a thoroughly detailed sketch of a plan. I'm really grateful that you've already tackled this much so far. I think a lot of it's exactly right. In my view, I think the the deadlines that you have in mind are the right ones. My only two pieces of little feedback would be when it comes to the number of languages that we're translating in. It might be good to check with the other small agencies that are similar to ours in size and budget to see what they're doing, especially if there are any that are trying to do kind of public outreach rather than having kind of a specific mission. And I almost wonder if it might make sense to do 10 either with the current congressional districts or something like that. That was my first reaction when I saw the 8 districts is close enough to 10 that we might be able to break it down that way.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Walkinshaw.
My general thought with this is I just think we ought to try to make sure that there's kind of roughly similar sizes of populations being served for roughly, similar consultation processes. So we don't have, multiple consultations for a smaller group of people versus, only one for a larger group. So as long as we think about, I would just encourage Lisa, and as she thinks about developing this further, to think about just making sure that there's pretty fair representation.
Thank you. Commissioner Fain.
Yeah, again, thanks for putting together the preliminary work on this. I do have a couple of thoughts. The first one was when I saw the target there of adults, I thought to myself, this is once in a decade opportunity to, bring our public schools into the process, and there might be some interested ninth grade Washington State history classes or folks like that might be interested in having more involvement or understanding of this process, and there may be a venue for us to take advantage of that, or one that's specifically around outreach that's specific around catering to maybe high school kids that might be interested in it. So there could be an educational opportunity there. And then the next one that dovetails with the staffing conversation is we're in a unique opportunity to take advantage of the fact that most of our folks will continue to be working remotely for some time. And one way that my organization, the Bellevue Chamber, has done that is that we have hired a number of interns from community and technical colleges, and we've got a lot of folks that are crunching numbers or doing outreach or doing social media, and they're all doing it for as part of their internship program. And so, and I've made some great hires out of that process as well. So as we're thinking about ways where we might want to get more folks engaged, and when we need more hands to do some of that outreach work, I'd certainly encourage outreach to those internship coordinators at the community and technical colleges, and 4 years for that matter.
Thank you, Commissioner Fain. Commissioner Sims.
Yes. Well, Lisa, I love that you, came from your census outreach work, and that you are, thinking about, you have that perspective in terms of what our outreach plan looks like. So I really appreciate that you've already done a lot of the brainstorm work for us. I think a couple of things that came up in looking at the plan, thinking about digital versus analog residents, and taking testimony and feedback in writing. I'm just wondering if we'll be set up to take writing or written testimony in language. So will we need translation services so that folks feel comfortable with sending us their thoughts in their primary language, which makes me think about the English and non-English and which languages we use, and whether or not any of the county or, like if school districts have resources that can identify which languages are primarily spoken in those communities, in those areas, that could potentially be a resource for us. I agree with, Commissioner Fain's point about adult residences, and, how can we engage some young folks in the civic process and get them excited about democracy. And to Commissioner Walkinshaw's comment about evenly divided districts, so that there's some distributive, outreach. And then I think, the message that we want your input is direct and to the point. I think it's a solid message, but I wonder if there's something by way of a slogan that might be a little more inspirational that we could come up with as a commission. This is a once in a decade opportunity to engage. So what does that look like? What is the play that you are going to, Commissioner Augustine?
Oh gosh.
That was a catchy title.
Yeah, many voices. Let's see, many district voice or something like that. Let me look.
Mini maps, mini lines.
Mini maps. That's what it was. Many maps, one voice. That's what it was. You're right.
I thought that was clever, but I just wonder, if we might want to, think about, and maybe this is the job of our communications director to really think about, like, how do we get that message out in a way that is inspirational and, kind of uplifting. And then in terms of timeline, I agree that once, we're completely staffed, this May to August timeline probably does make the most sense. But then I'm wondering if we need to build out a separate outreach plan once we have the census data and we have some idea of what those maps will look like, so that we can get feedback that we can incorporate into our final map making. So just thinking about that. I think this is a really great start. And, there's so much work to do and so many different ways to do it. I'm looking forward to more creative voices in the room.
Okay, great. Additional comments, questions, suggestions? All right. So I want to now suggest a process. I'm going to suggest that we'll take this feedback and start working it into a more detailed plan. And we're going to circulate that plan. And then I'm going to also suggest that we'll probably discuss it a little more at another meeting before we take action. Does that make sense? We're going to create a plan, we'll bring it back, and then continue working on it. Does that sound like a good process? Commissioners?
Yes.
Okay. All right, terrific. So thank you, Lisa, for all of your work, for the work you've done already and for the work that's yet to come. We appreciate that. And next, what I'd like to do is move into agenda item number 5, which is public comment. So we have just 2 participants who wish to make a public comment this evening. And so speaking to, so I just got a message from Sean, who says that we just have one testifier present. And so I am going to call your name, Jeffrey Olsen, when, okay, so we have two persons here. Sorry, I'm getting messages in the moment. So we have 2 persons here. When I call your name, your status in Zoom will change from observer to panelist. And when I do that, you're going to have 3 minutes to speak. At the end of your allotted time, you will be muted. We realize that 3 minutes is a very brief time in which to share your comments, and we're interested in what you have to say and urge you to send your written comments to us via the following email, which is comment@redistricting.wa.gov. So I see that we have, I'm sorry, sir, I can only see the first 2 items of your name on Zoom. Chairman Leonard, if you could begin by introducing yourself, that would be great. Please go ahead and begin.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Leonard Forstman, and chairman of the Suquamish tribe here near Suquamish, Indianola, and also president affiliate tribe of the Northwest Indians, and here to talk about the redistricting effort that's so vital to our democracy and also to our preserving our relationship between us and the federal government that was established by the Treaty of Point Elliott, and the trust responsibility that the federal government committed to. And we also expect and often enjoy from our state and local governments here in Washington. So I'd just like to thank you for recognizing the importance of the government-government relationship that sovereign tribes in the state of Washington have long had. We support the language outlined in the proposed consultation policy, but ask for one point of clarification. We believe in consistency and clarity We believe for consistency and clarity that all references to tribes be stated as federally recognized tribes located in Washington state to alleviate any ambiguity. This language ensures all parties are recognized appropriately, and this helps ensure continuity within other policies, laws, and regulations. Thank you again for this inclusion of this policy at the beginning of your work, and we look forward to meaningful consultations in the near future and throughout. And I'd like to thank you all for your commitment to this important process. Ahoy, Chud, I am finished.
Thank you so much for choosing to join us this evening. We're thankful for your comment. And if you would like to submit written comment, we'd love to see that. Thank you. We appreciate it. Next is Jeffrey Olsen. Sir, we can see you, and feel free to begin when you're ready.
I thank the commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I thank you for having this meeting. I would like to ask that more information about the various groups be given, like abstract statistics for the Indian tribes. I thank April for mentioning that there was 29 tribes. I'm a number cruncher. I love doing number crunching. Therefore, I would like to have more input on the abstract statistics and how they would work on the redistricting. I would also like to get in touch with others who are crunching numbers here. Then I would like to suggest that you put up each congressional district and each legislative district so people can make comments on them, and so I can see what others have said about changes to that district. Now, I would probably go on about Spokane, but I'm going to skip that for a later date, and I'll get back the rest of my time.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your willingness to join us this evening. And if you would like to submit your comment in writing, we would love to see that as well. We appreciate your comment. And so I just want to reiterate what you said to make sure that I understand it. It sounds like you would like for us to publish the districts as they are with an opportunity for comment. Is that right? So that you can see what other people are commenting as well.
Yes, so I can see what others, where we can get some dialogue between those who, so we can work together.
Great. Thank you. I sure appreciate that. All right, so that concludes the public comment portion of our agenda. It is now time to take action, and our action item, we only have one this evening, which is the 2021 Redistricting Commission Tribal Consultation Policy. And so I want to ask now if we want to go forward with this, or if we want to make the amendments that have been suggested, give some more time, and push it to another meeting. I'm going to begin with Commissioner Walkinshaw.
I would be curious what my fellow commissioners think on this, but I would probably be inclined to push to the subsequent meeting.
You bet. Commissioner Fain?
If Commissioner Walkinshaw wants to hold to the next meeting, I don't think this is a necessarily time-sensitive issue. If that's not correct, and there's a reason we would need to adopt it now for something that we need to start working on, then I'd be persuaded otherwise, but it sounds like there's no rush.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Fain. And just to respond to that comment, although we, from my point of view, we're obligated to have a policy, it doesn't, even if we didn't have one, it wouldn't preclude us from being able to engage in consultation. So I agree that it's not necessarily a time-sensitive issue, but I want to take action on it at a reasonable time, so when it's the right time, so that we're doing our job we are complying with our obligations. So next is Commissioner Sims.
Yeah, I agree that we can wait until the next meeting. I think that sounds right.
Great. Commissioner Graves.
I agree with what's been said and have nothing to add.
Terrific. All right. So we will push that to our next agenda. And so with that, that concludes our meeting. So congratulations, team. We made it in under an hour. I would like to adjourn. And as usual, I'd also like to thank the people who made this meeting possible. So I want to thank you, First Commissioners, for your service, for your time and attention tonight. And I recognize the amount of work that you put into just being present for the people of the state. Thank you. It's a lot of time and effort to be prepared and to be thinking about these issues. Thank you for your time and your service. I want to thank the staff members, the staff and the members of the public who have taken the time to join us this evening. Thank you, especially folks who shared public comment with us. I want to thank Lisa Mclean and Bernard Dean and Emma Grumberg, who provided staff support for discussion and action items this evening. Sean Murray provided tech support, and Maria Garza provided admin support, including taking minutes. I also want to acknowledge individual commissioner staff members who put effort into meeting commission requests and drafting documents. These include Osta, Paul, Anton, and Ali. Thank you. And thank you to Lisa from Legislative Support Services HR. Thanks to AG Council, Tara, for being here with us tonight and for your help with preparing the policy. This meeting is now adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.